right, looks like we're good. So this is episode 11, I think, of Going South. We're still in the deep South. Today I'm talking with Jordan Rose, who was kind of referred to me by an earlier person I had on the podcast, Angie Tillman. Jordan was one of Angie's students pretty much throughout his career. And Jordan, if I get this wrong, help me, okay? He went to Quitman County Schools or Brooks County Schools, and he was in the gifted program for most of that time with Angie, who I interviewed a few weeks ago. He is currently, so he's a Southerner, it's fair to say?
Yes.
He is currently a senior, even though he's only in the second year at Morehouse. So we can talk about how that happened in terms of college credits before you got there, but he's a Morehouse man. And for folks who don't know much about Morehouse, it's a pivotal institution in the history of this country, as far as I'm concerned. Dr. King went there. There's a litany of great historic figures that came out of Morehouse. So it has a rich, deep legacy in the shaping of our country. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
So he is, like I said, a senior. He is majoring in political science, planned to be an attorney at one point, but he got the creative bug, it sounds like, and now he's a video maker. He does commercial video production. I'd love to hear about how that transition happened too. He also minors in sociology, so he'll be wrapping things up pretty soon. So Jordan, first and foremost, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thanks for making time today and being willing to talk with me. How's Morehouse been? How's that experience been for you?
The very little amount of time that I've had to be at Morehouse was probably the best, I guess you'd say, semester in 1 month I've ever had in my life, because I was only there from August 2019 till the beginning, like the first day of March.
Gotcha. Because of COVID?
Because of COVID. So I haven't been back since. No one's been back since. They're opening the school back up next month for a spring semester, but only for 1,200 people. So I'm not going to be a part of those 200 people. I'm going to be online working from home, of course. But as far as how is Morehouse, like I said, it's probably I would consider it the best experience I've ever had in my life. Because being from Quitman, being from South Georgia, or really being from anywhere in the South, you're never really surrounded in an atmosphere of a deep Black thought. Of course, the only communities of minority people are the low-caste communities. So naturally, those communities are also very miseducated or undereducated because of, financial issues with the government and, lack of government providing for substantial education. So for many Southerners that go to Morehouse or any HBCU of that point, it's their very first time being in an atmosphere of, straight Black geniuses. A lot of Northerners, they don't have that same luxury because in the North, there are several communities or several, institutions that serve majority minority students that also get those types of fundings, even though they're still by and far. But we don't have that at all in the South. So for a lot of Southerners that end up going to Morehouse or any HBCU, that's our first and sometimes our only time that we're going to be indulged in a area of really intelligent Blackness or educated Blackness. So I say educated Blackness.
Yeah. So, and it's fair to say they're white folks at Morehouse, right?
There are two.
Yeah.
But I mean, my favorite teacher at Morehouse is a white man. Our teachers are a lot more diversified than the students.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I'm not putting that off on Morehouse. I mean, I think some white folks might not even consider HBCUs. I know at FAMU, they have a significant white population, specifically because it's an engineering school too, right?
Yeah.
So can we go back to what you were saying though? Like, because what I've heard from Black folks, as well as, other folks in my life that aren't white, So growing up in Quitman, I mean, especially if you were in the gifted program, were there a lot of other Black kids in those programs?
No.
Yeah.
So I was I won't say the first because I wasn't the first, but of my age group, me and another girl were the first Black students, like in our 2-3 year age group. Because when we got there weren't any other Black kids. I don't think. No, there's another Black kid. He's like in the 5th grade,
Yeah.
and like that wasn't like the fault of Miss Tillman, because like I said, in these areas, minority people, not just Black people, also the Latinx community, we're oftentimes denied opportunities like that, and I'm glad. Well, me and the girl that got in at first, both of our parents were educators.
Yeah.
So we didn't have like priority, but we had parents that saw the gift in us and pushed it towards Miss Tillman. Miss Tillman took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
So, and like I know for a fact she's always pushed to get more, a more diverse program.
Yeah, and I love Angie. I'm not suggesting she was discriminating, but
oh no,
when we look at the data in schools, whether it's about our city schools or whatever, right? Folks of color are underrepresented. Well, and I think when I think of Brooks County in particular, the poverty rate among Black folks is just off the scale, right? Exactly. And I think we got to be careful not to conflate race and class and what's playing out. But so I bring that up because so basically through your public education, you're in the gifted program, largely with, I'm assuming, white teachers and white students, right? And then when made you choose Morehouse?
Well, I only applied. I got accepted to like 50 or 60 schools, but I actually only took my time to apply to Morehouse, Howard, and Yale. And I got accepted to all those. Yale's gonna give me like something near a full ride.
Yeah.
Howard was giving me
when you say full ride, you're basically scholarship. They're gonna pay for your tuition and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Howard was giving me a scholarship, but it wasn't a full ride. Neither was Morehouse. But when it came,
so wait. You're telling me you had a full ride at Yale, but you chose Morehouse?
Yes.
Wow.
When it came time, I get that a lot. And even when I got to Morehouse and I told them that, they thought I was the stupidest person ever. But when it came time for me to pick where I wanted to go to school, I just really took the time to think about where do I want to be in a place like Quitman for another 4 years, or I was gonna graduate early, so another 3 years. But do I want to continue being in a place like Quitman? And all 3 of those institutions are up to the same par education-wise, which many people may not believe. Because when people hear of Yale, they think that's the second most known Ivy League school.
Ivy League, yeah.
Yeah, so of course they believe their education is so far above any HBCU. But I mean, at the same time, for any Yale scholar, you can name a Morehouse scholar that's just as famous.
Absolutely. Or if not more famous.
Exactly. So so with that in mind, I just sat down and said what type of Black man do I want to be going through my life. Easily, I know if I did win the Yale, that would boost my confidence up entirely too much. And Morehouse boosted my confidence up as well. But being able to say that I'm a Black male from the hood that went to Yale, that would naturally, subconsciously, that would push me a lot further away from my people that I want to be. I wouldn't learn about who I am as a person, as a Black male. I wouldn't learn about poverty issues or Black issues as a whole. There's so many things that I wouldn't learn just because I went to Yale. Rather than if I went to Howard or Morehouse, I knew I'd be guaranteed learning that. And I'm glad I did, because within my first couple of weeks in school, I learned more about myself than I ever learned in my life. So that's why I know I made the right decision.
Can we explore that a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So what you just said to me was, first 2 weeks at a HBCU, you learn more about yourself than you ever had in your whole life. Can you say some more about that? Because I think folks need to hear this, and I appreciate you sharing it. What does that mean?
I learned I'm not half as the leader as I thought I was. Because I did, when I wanted to be a politician or a lawyer, my ultimate goal was to be the president. And going to Morehouse, it quickly showed me how much I have to work on. Because I've always been, the strong black lead in a white space. Whenever I talk, everyone listens. Ms. Timmy will probably tell you that as well. She's talking to you right now. Whenever I talk, everyone else listens. But going into a place where there are literally 3,500 other black males just like you, just as strong as you, just as powerful as you, just as influential as you in their communities, we instantly learn how much harder it is to lead people who don't blindly follow you or who aren't subconsciously afraid of you. So within like the first few days, first week, I learned that, okay, these people are not gonna listen to me like they did in Quitman. So, so it took a lot of self-evaluation. I mean, of course, I learned a lot about my culture. So many things that I was denied the opportunity to learn. And in school of growing up, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I probably can't really think of anything specific. So, I mean, I learned several things throughout my first semester. And it was just, you learn how many lies you were told growing up, and you begin to get things from a truly black perspective, and you learn how we felt about things or how the ancestors of black people felt about things going throughout, the history of America.
Yeah.
Rather than the white perspective, which makes things seem as if, it wasn't really that bad.
Right.
That's something we hear a lot growing up in school in the South. It wasn't really that bad. Then you get to HBCU and you learn how extremely terrible they were. You see letters written from slaves or from civil rights leaders.
Right.
We hear, we've talked to several civil rights. We talked to Reverend Laurie this past not too long ago. We talked to him and we know how he actually felt. Yeah. So it's just so many things that you learn about who you are as a black person, or learn about about other black people that you just never learned.
Yeah.
And
well, and I go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you.
You're good.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I've talked about over the years is institutional racism. Mm-hmm. Also not what's taught and what's said about what's taught, but it's what's left out.
Yes.
Right. So for example, growing up in Brooks County, do you know the whole history of lynching in Brooks County? And
yes, I know that the big oak trees on the courtyards line were all used for lynching.
Yeah. Did you know about the slave revolt there?
The slave what?
Revolt.
I didn't. I heard about it at one point in time, but I never. That was one of the few things someone mentioned, and then like I said, they said it wasn't that bad, but no one ever really taught it.
I want to say they hung either 4 or 5 people on the courthouse lawn. Too. Mm-hmm. Brooks County, you might not know this, it was the lynching capital of Georgia.
Yeah.
In terms of the number of folks they killed. So I think so. It sounds like there was all this stuff you didn't get exposed to. Morehouse exposes you to that. But did it feel? What did it feel like to be in the majority for the first time?
That's the best thing about it. I learned that I didn't have to censor myself.
Can you say something about what that means? Because again, people are going to hear this and they may not know what you mean by censoring yourself.
Oh, okay. So when you're in the minority, which most people are, wherever they go, you're always in the minority, unless you're, of course, in the hood. You do the thing called identity politics. So you change who you are as the essence of who you are as a person. You change the way you talk. You change the way you walk. You change the way you think, depending on who's around you. So that's a constant censorship of who you genuinely are and who you want to be. So being an intelligent black guy that's in a white school or in a white area, period, I always would switch my voice depending on who I'm talking to. Or depending on how smart I want to sound. I will switch the way I will walk. I'll switch the way I want to talk to like, I when I'm around, higher up white people in the school system, I don't use African American vernacular. I don't use slang, you know, and that's what I use when I talk to anyone else. That's how I use. I talk to my mom. That's how I use. I talk to my friends.
Yeah.
So I used to subconsciously wonder, like, why do I do that?
Can you hold you're kind of, the camera's moving all over the place.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's good. So I would constantly wonder, like, why would I do that? And I knew I was doing it, but I never understood why until I got to school and I realized I can talk in slang. I can talk how I want to talk. I can dress how I want to dress. If I want to sag, I can sag. If I want to walk around with a do-rag, I can walk around in a do-rag. And no one's going to look at me any differently. No one's going to think, oh, he's probably that guy from the hood that's not smart, you know, or they're not going to think that I'm any less of a person because of that, because everyone does it.
Yeah. So you just said something that's really important, I think. So you weren't aware you were doing that until you went to Morehouse?
I was aware. I didn't know why I was.
Okay.
Like, I always knew, like, I switched my voice when they come around. Like, that's something I just knew. And it was something that I was doing. Like, it was just like, I could always do it. Like, no matter, I could like be talking to someone, one of my friends, and then I could hear someone's voice coming in the background, instantly just switch it up.
Yeah.
And I knew I was doing it. When I got to Morehouse, I really started to think, and our teachers were telling us why we were doing it. Like on the first day of school, they were like, one of the teachers was like, "Why are you talking like that?" Like, you know, because we had this idea of Morehouse that this is how they talk as well. You know, they didn't use slang. And my teacher, he was like, no, you know, I think my first class was a Tuesday. So yeah, my very first class at Morehouse, it was, you know, gotta do that, you know. So I learned very quickly that I didn't have to switch who I am to prove that I'm smart, you know.
I want to come back to the majority again. You were making me think of a zillion questions that are so important. Is it fair to say that Black folks in Quitman do that? And is it fair to say that Black folks in Quitman also probably sometimes fear they can't be honest with white people?
Yes. My mom, like I said, my mom was she was
and I'm sorry to interrupt you. Condolences, your mom passed.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, she did. Thank you.
COVID related, I think.
Yeah, it was COVID related.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry.
It's good. All right, thank you. So yeah, my mom passed, and she was an administrator, not a school administrator. She was an administrator of a after school program for most of her working career. And we used to pick on her for that. Because sometimes she would feel, well, like, I feel like until like the last few years of my life, she would feel like she had to switch who she was to make a point to other administrators or other people in the same place as her. And like, I used to be like, Mom, you make more money than them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to do that. You know, you don't have to censor who you are you don't have to put on this sense of professionalism. And you can be professional without talking like them, you know? And she was a lot older than me, but I feel like that's one of the things that she did learn from me, because I stopped doing that as well. And I started telling her about that as well. Like, Mom, like, why when they walked in, you switch your voice, you know, like, you can be who you are, you know, and if they're scared of you because you're a strong, demanding Black woman, let them be scared, you know, because you've worked just as hard as them, even harder to them, to be in the same office as them, you know, to make just as much money as them. So you don't have to switch who you are depending on who's walking in. You don't have to switch your voice, the way you move, the way you think, because the superintendent's walking in, right. You know? And that's something a lot of other Black people are doing. And everyone's not in the same position as my mom to be able to do that or to be able to like get out of it, because a lot of people, they feel like they're not gonna get a job if they talk how they want to talk, or if they don't get a job, you know, they're not gonna be able to take care of the kids, so they have to do this. Or when the police pulls them over, you know, a lot of people feel like they have to switch how they talk, or, you know, their life's at danger. Yeah. You know, and that's something I know a lot of people like. I've been in the car with people that do that, and people have realized that I don't do that anymore. Like, I talk how I talk, you know, regardless of who's around, of if you have a badge on, if you're the superintendent, if you're the mayor, whoever you are, I'm going to talk how I talk. I may use less cuss words or something, but I'm going to use a slang that I would use if I was talking to a friend, because there's no sense of me talking like someone else to prove a point.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a confusing thing for white folks because most white people in my life don't realize that black folks are kind of code switching,
Mm-hmm.
right? And have to kind of have a double consciousness, like Du Bois talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, since a lot of black folks don't say anything because they're worried about their jobs, they're worried about their kids if they get in any trouble, right? A lot of white folks interpret that as everything is okay. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? When everything is not okay, but people are doing that to survive and keep jobs and
Exactly.
get through the day. So it's a kind of this catch 22 in a way, you know. But so back to the, were there other things that like being in the majority, you felt like you could be, sounds like more authentic, right? And
Yes.
be really you. What else was different?
Um, they served a lot more cultural food. Um,
Yeah.
and that was something that I really did enjoy.
You can,
Like,
Brooks County food's pretty good. Good. Southern cooking's pretty good though, right?
yeah, I mean, Berth County food isn't that good. I mean, they still have to meet all the health laws, but just whenever you go places, like, if you were to go somewhere like someone's cooking for like this event in Berth County, it wasn't always, geared towards who was there.
Yeah.
But at Morehouse, I mean, we had fried fish Wednesday, fried chicken Fridays, and like every day of the week, it was something. The food was for black people by black people. It was our culture's food. So being in the majority made eating a lot easier. And also being in the majority, I felt a lot safer. Um, just because when I come to equipment, we just talked about cultural sensitivity, who we are. When I come to equipment, I still have to censor myself somewhat, or I'm going to be at fear of my life. Um, so just like relating this to the police issues that's going on or that's been going on. When you're at an HBCU, the police, they understand. They're not afraid of you. So I mean, even if I'm angry, even if I'm upset, and
Having a bad
I'm a
day.
yeah, if I'm having a bad day, I'm a 6'1", 280 pound black
Oh,
male. If I'm mad and the police sees me, they're going to think I'm going to kill them. They're going to think their life is at risk. But the campus police don't feel like that.
yeah.
And I've seen so many videos of campus police at PWI, which is predominantly white institutions, where if you're built like me or if you're just black, period, the police also have issue with you, like the regular police would.
Yeah.
With our campus police or that's of any HBCU I went to, they're not afraid of you because of who you are. They're not afraid of how you look. If you give them a reason to be afraid of you, they're probably going to be afraid of you. But they don't have this natural sense of fear that causes them to act out of that fear.
Yeah.
So I felt a lot safer being who I wanted to be on campus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of white folks, since we can usually choose who we interact with, we're so accustomed to being in the majority, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get a little taste of the minority experience when we, adventure out, into places we don't necessarily have to go. But I think it's fair to say that people of color, if they want to be in the United States and have power, they have to interact with us in a way we don't necessarily always have to interact with them. But it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like, that's got to be a seriously hard transition to be graduating from Morehouse and kind of having that haven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're spiritually reinforced, intellectually reinforced, and then, so you literally felt it when you would come home, the difference, or
Yes. Yes. Like I worked for the same program my mom was the administrator for. So I mean, even now I'm still involved in the school system down
yeah,
here, and like just walking in or being around these teachers, and like I'm a tutor for the after school program. So like there's many times where I have to tell students like that's wrong, they're lying to you, or their perspective of that isn't the right thing, and they think I'm crazy sometimes to look it up and they're like, oh, you're right.
yeah,
Um, so even some of my students tell me they've learned more from me than they do from their regular 8 to 3 teacher. So when I walk in or when I walk in these spaces, I feel it's like a shift of of nervousness, of fear. And it's not like I'm scared, but like, subconsciously I'm scared to be myself, or, someone's going to be afraid of me. And luckily everyone knows me, so there's no reason. So like I can just walk into the school without anyone, feeling scared for their life. You know what I'm saying? This big grown man's walking around, because everyone knows.
But if they didn't know you, it might be different.
Exactly. So it'd be a lot more different. So
have you run into any flack when you tell students something they've been taught is inaccurate? Like, has there been any pushback on that?
Yes. Well, not regarding race issues, but I was just we were having this discussion about parental involvement in the children's life, and I was telling the students that a lot of parents are so strict on their students on their children, because their insecurities are blocking their desire to be a good parent. So they think they're being a good parent, but they're really just being insecure, and they don't want their kid to come out like them or go through what they went through. Yeah. So I was just telling them that, and they thought I was just the craziest person in the world. They're like, "You don't have kids, so how would you know? You don't have kids, how would you know?" I mean, because I was a kid. I did grow up. My mom was alive. I ended up, we had deep talks about that, about some of the ways she would parent me, even though like my mom was an amazing parent, the best of all of them. All parents have their flaws. So when I was old enough to like understand and tell her, a lot of things that she pushed on me, a lot of the reason that she did some of the things that she did was because she was afraid that I was going to be too much like her or come up like her, and those are just her deepest insecurities that she's afraid to live through me.
Why would that be bad? Well, why do you think she thought that would not be good if you were too much like her?
Well, I mean, I don't know. And I mean, maybe that's going to come up with me being a parent. I can't answer the question of why do they think that way, but I know they think that way, and they don't know they're thinking like that. A lot of parents don't know that. Like, I was telling a girl, she was like, my mom doesn't let me go in the store, or she doesn't let me talk to the boys, or she doesn't let me have a phone. I'm like, okay, but you're 18 in 2020, wow. So, and everyone's like, oh, your mom, she just loves you. She's just a good parent. Well, no, your mom's insecure. And like, I'm comfortable telling you that because I've taken the time to understand, to study why our parents like this, or what are parents doing that making children feel this way.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, it seems to me that because white folks have got parents that are what I would call overbearing and too controlling.
Yeah.
But the black folks in my life, I think, have a different motivation for doing that oftentimes, especially if they've got young black sons.
Yes.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. My mom was the same way. My mom,
like my way to protect you is to be strict, because see, I wasn't taught growing up in South Georgia that the police might be dangerous, that I was taught that the world was kind of mine, and the black folks in my life that I've developed relationships with tell me that they had a fundamentally different experience.
Well, my mom was a single mom, and I was her only child, so it was always just me and her. She was very, very strict. I don't say like strict, like I wasn't allowed to go places. Like, she wasn't that strict, but her philosophy was her philosophy. Like, her rules were her rules. Like, I wasn't allowed to bring bees home. I was always, talk these big words so I could code switch. I was always taught how to interact with police. I was always, drilled on a lot of things, like randomly quizzed on these type of things, growing up. Or like, she wouldn't even like, my curfew was my curfew because she knew, like, on certain days when the police would be out. So I wasn't allowed to be out on those nights, And those are just, she was an amazing parent. Those are just qualities, her being an amazing, worried parent. But it was also just her insecurities living through me. Like, she was insecure. Like, she was afraid that if I was allowed to be myself, something would happen to me. Because we've seen so many black kids, and even in our area, just be themselves and end up in jail, or just because someone's afraid of them, or because they're in the right.
Yeah, but you hear what you're saying? Like, this is so profound, right? That parents, especially in the deep South, that are black, basically are, in your words, kind of not letting kids be themselves because of the context.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is profound. A lot of people don't realize it, but I mean that's literally what happened. Like, and even like me growing up, because like, you know, one day I'm gonna have to have kids. I'm honestly quite terrified to let them be themselves. Because anything like me, something may happen to them, you know, because I'm very robust and outspoken, and I don't care how anyone feels about what I say. So they're like me, you know, something may happen to them as well, and I understand that fear, you know. But that's just me discussing it for what it is, you know, and not critiquing it for it being bad, but that's calling it for what it is.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, it raises, for me, I've been grappling with, I mean, even this podcast is creating some drama locally, and it's really exposed the myth of free speech. Like, you know, that in conservative places, everybody says you're free and you can do it. But what I have found, when you say certain things that folks don't agree with, there's consequences for that, right?
Exactly.
And the folks of color in my life, I would argue, have never enjoyed free speech. Like, again, they're kind of always weighing what the consequences of their speech might be.
And that's something that another reason I went to Morehouse was, I mean, because I related to Morehouse men so much in the way that I never allowed anyone else's rules to impede on my natural, you know, given right of free speech. Like even like coming through like later my years in high school, I was constantly exposing people for, you know, their blatant racism, or, you know, calling things out for, you know, what they were. And a lot of people were scared of that, of scared to do the things that I would. So they would come to me. Like, I was like the leader of our entire class, because, you know, when things went wrong, I was always going talking out. You know, I wasn't afraid of the consequences of calling things for what they are, you know, because I mean, someone has to. And if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
Do you think you had more kind of social capital, more clout, because you were in the gifted program and your mom was an administrator?
Yeah, with the teachers, yes, and with the students, that had nothing to do with it. I mean, the teachers knew me and they loved me because of who my mom was, and because they knew I was smart and I was intelligent. And, you know, everyone wants to have, when, you know, a village takes a village to raise a child, so everyone wants to be a part of my village, you know, because they know that they thought or had an idea that I would be something great in my life. So I'm very thankful for that. But with the students, I feel like I had to work harder for their respect and for them to know me and like me.
They didn't care who your mama was, did they?
Yeah, they didn't care. But I didn't like my mom, because my mom was hard on them as well, just like she was hard on me. They didn't like my mom until like later, to realize that, okay, she was like that for a certain reason. So I had to work even harder to get their respect, and I'm glad I did, because I mean, a lot of things that we were able to do, or a lot of the issues that we were able to push, was because, you know, not to give myself all the glory, but because I was the one who had the nerve, who had the boldness to speak out against it, you know, regardless of if we're going to get put in ISS or not. You know?
Yeah. Can we shift and talk about BLM for just a second?
Yeah.
You know, I don't, for me, BLM is a 400-year movement. You know what I mean? This is just the latest manifestation, and the existence of places like Morehouse and Spelman they're at the core of BLM, right? You can say Black Voices Matter, BVM too, right? And Black Minds Matter. How has that been? Because you're also in Atlanta, and the reason I ask is a lot of white folks, conservatives here, have said some of the most ludicrous things about BLM, that we're talking about communists, that BLM is banking literally billions of dollars from the Democratic Party. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous that BLM is violent, militant, socialist. And my experience with all the folks I know in BLM here and other places has not been that. And most of the conservative talk shows nationally and locally never have anybody from BLM on. So there's kind of a privilege in that I got a microphone and I'm going to say whatever I want to about that group. I never actually, well, and that's kind of, it's not only a privilege to me, that is white supremacy.
Yeah.
That I'm going to define y'all. I'm not going to find out if I'm wrong. I'm not going to include anybody and actually have a conversation because you're not even worth talking to. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on BLM. I'm sorry to go on my little soapbox there.
Well, going to Morehouse, I realized Black Lives Matter isn't a movement. It's not an organization. Black lives just matter. Like that's just like it just Black Lives Matter. Period. You know, I feel as if Black Lives Matter was never meant to be this multi-million-dollar organization. I'm sort of
What
upset.
is it?
They do make money. The two founders of it do make a lot of money from it.
So where are they based though? They have nonprofits, or how's the structure?
I don't want to,
because most of the folks I know have been in these local chapters that are all grassroots, right? They're not getting any money,
Yeah. So at the root of the movement, at the root of the of the shift in social thought is these grassroots movements, and they're the ones that's really pushing. They're the ones actually doing all the work. Yeah. But I'm very careful saying this because I could quote like news articles, but I'm pretty sure those news articles are written by white people who have these very racist feelings on it. But some article at some point in time, and I feel like the two founders of the Black Lives Matter hashtag, they are receiving payment. They are like mildly rich, and like they're not putting the money from their payments into these grassroots
into the movement. Yeah.
So that's one of the rumors. Yeah. But also rumors can be started by racist people. So that could be a lot.
It's also the case, though, one thing I do know is true, that a lot of corporate America have signed on, right? Symbolically. It's fascinating. And I would argue they did that because of the black dollar. Like, especially, any consumer products, right? The country's changing. It's getting browner. They know the market is getting browner. So their motives, I'm a little suspicious of. Do you really think Black Lives Matter? Are you really twist, or is it safe to do it? And not only that, it's profitable to do it. Is that fair? Is that a fair criticism?
All these people are just doing it because they know if they don't, we're not gonna buy their stuff anymore.
Yeah.
No, if either you're with us or if you shut up for too long, we're going to, we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. It's going to make you look bad. And that's just the way. I know for a fact the CEO of Nike does not care about what's going on in America. When you're at a certain level of wealth, regardless of race, anyone else's in the lower classes or problems have nothing to do with you. So I'm not saying like they're all racist. They just don't care.
Well, can I complicate this a little bit more? I was in Portland for 4 years, the home of the Nike headquarters, right? Mm-hmm. And I would argue they've appropriated just social justice in general. Like, there's no Nike factories in this country. And there have been black athletes, I would argue, that have bought into supporting Nike and not said, well, what about the children and the brown folks making these shoes somewhere else work? You know what I mean? Like, there's a way that Nike and others who are multinationals, they don't care about anybody who's not black, right? They're making those shoes at the lowest cost, bringing them back here and marketing them to folks of color. So it gets, It gets kind of complicated for me. Philip Knight doesn't care about folks of color, as far as I'm concerned.
And that's true. Like if you care about black people, you wouldn't just. Black Lives Matter is a way of life. It's a way of thinking. Period. That these people matter, and it's not just constrained to black people mattering. If you feel like Black Lives Matter, you inherently feel like all lives matter. Those include those 7-year-old Chinese workers that they're paying $5 an hour to make our shoes. So if you genuinely felt like all of these lives matter, you would show it. You would pay adults in those countries working wages instead of paying them 15 cents an hour. You would prove it, and that's one of the biggest problems with corporate America, with rich people as a whole. There are so many hypocritical ways of thinking that are exposed when you just sit down and just like realize it. Like if they really cared about black people, they wouldn't just be doing ads with black people.
A marketing campaign, right?
Exactly. Like what are they really doing for black people or for lower income people, period, for Latinx community, for Muslim people, for anyone else other than white people. So,
Yeah.
you know, when you look at it like that, it's like you realize quickly how that's what I'm not impressed by any of them. You know, I'm not impressed by any brand who's still profiting off of the colored dollar in other countries, who's still profiting off of, you know, underpaying these young kids in the middle of Asia. If you're getting any money from that and you're claiming that you support Black Lives Matter, I know you're lying. I know you're doing it because you're scared of us shunning you, you know? So,
well, and I think Nike's devotion is to its stockholders,
mm-hmm.
making sure their stock increases in wealth. But I mean, the question of Black Lives Matter, to me, it comes also down to the local level for me. Like the fact that we are not teaching an accurate history in public schools about the place where we live in and what happened
Mm-hmm.
here, that helps us understand today. That omission to me is a commentary on Black lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the fact that we live in a state where Black tax dollars go to celebrate Confederate, you know, soldiers who wanted to expand slavery into the Western territories, right, is a commentary. It's an active commentary on Black lives. And when you have, when you have lawmakers, it's not, we want to use your tax dollars to celebrate folks who didn't think you were human, right? Like it's,
exactly.
So I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about it as a lifestyle. It's not just something that happens in the street. It's not just a protest movement. It's kind of a way of life.
Exactly.
And I would argue most of white America, we're afraid to go there for a variety of reasons, you know?
Yeah. And that's something that maybe I do want to ask you that, like, from a white man's perspective, why are other people in white America afraid to just embody or just afraid to genuinely accept that, you know, all lives matter? You know, and I hate the phrase all lives matter, but you know, if you believe all lives matter is saying that you believe my life matters just like yours. You know, that's what it's supposed to mean, not, you know, not as opposition to Black Lives Matter. But, you know, why are white people afraid to genuinely why are white people afraid to accept that black people just want their voices heard. They want their stories told, their lives to be of some type of meaning other than, you know, a free kill for a lot of them.
Yeah. So can you restate your question so I just make sure I hear it right?
Why are white people afraid to accept that Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I would argue it's ideological. It's really white supremacy. And what I mean by that is I'm not talking about the Klan or the neo-Nazis. That's a public form of white supremacy. But, you know, you and I grew up in a place where white people controlled everything largely. I went to church where I worshiped a white Jesus, even though it's a Middle Eastern religion. And the Bible says he was brown, you know, like, you know, we're also in a country built on a bunch of myths, right? I think this is why the right is reacting. They want to go back to a mythical time that didn't exist. Donald Trump wanted to take America, make it great again. Evidently, there was some point in the past where it was great, but the question is, great for who, right? So to answer your question, you know, I would say spiritually, existentially, white America wants to keep believing the myths, right? And if we tell the truth, we ain't going to know who we are. And if we tell the truth, we're going to be really uncomfortable. If we tell the truth, we've got to feel what our ancestors and folks do contemporarily, right? And then we got to figure out who we're going to be in all of that, you know, and most of us don't want to do it. And instead, we want to reinforce the mythology, which is racist and patriarchal and all these other things. I mean, this country was not meant, you know this, it wasn't meant to be a democracy. It had to be forced to let other people vote, right? And I think that's what makes it an interesting and great experience, a human experiment in human freedom. And it's always been people on the ground making the country be what it is. But I think we wouldn't know who we are if we didn't have that internalized superiority, you know, which we're also kind of blind to it, right? it doesn't cross my mind that I should learn African American history, even though I live in a state that got 3 million black folks. I live in a country that had 246 years of slavery, you know, and 100 years of Jim Crow and decades of lynching, right? I'm surrounded by black folks, but it never crosses my mind that you should matter enough for me to know your history as much as you have to know mine.
Exactly.
You know, so I think it's a spiritual question in some regards. Does that answer? That's a whole lot to answer.
Yeah, it does. And just to talk about like some of the things you said, I do agree. I mean, like just to talk about like the history aspect of it, like I feel like I see how uncomfortable white people are in school during February, you know, during Black History Month. And I never understood. I mean, I understood why. I mean, a lot of them were just racist, but I mean, it just always.
When February wasn't radical, right? Y'all weren't learning about Malcolm X and, you know, is that fair to say?
No, I didn't learn anything about Malcolm X in the Morehouse.
Yeah,
I just knew he was. They made him look like he was just a violent version of MLK, and that's just what it left it at. They talk about everyone other.
So, I mean, that's an important point, right? Like what you got in quote unquote Black history, the segregated shortest month of the year in itself is a problem.
Yeah,
I would argue. I
think because they pick and choose who they want to teach us about.
Yeah, I think we're afraid if we taught the truth, Native American folk, Chicano, Mexican American folk, Black folk, like you've already talked about this, would have a sense of self and personhood that I don't think we want folk to have.
Yeah.
I think it's a threat. And I think we also would, again, have to figure out who we are in this legacy. And for the record, you know, there are white folks that have died for the right things, right? We could talk about, you know, the folks killed during the civil rights movement, Kirshner, Cheney and the other folks, Viola Louisa. We could talk about John Brown. We could talk, you know, we could go down the list that there were folks who defected from the racial order. And that's what I would argue. Let's learn about the white folks that did the right thing.
Exactly. There
is this hidden legacy of folks, you know. But yeah, I think I've always claimed that American, and I taught for 20 years in colleges and universities, and I've always claimed they're racist. Not that a Klan member is running them, but what they determine is knowledge, and who they determine who has to learn about who, and who can come to. Even in Atlanta, I taught at Georgia State for 4 years, down the road from Morehouse, down the road from Dr. King's house. So you could go to that institution and not have to learn anything about Black folks and the Black Mecca.
They're exactly, and Georgia State is predominantly Black, and it's crazy. Yeah, and like that's why exactly.
And some would say that's kind of a violence, like to deny people self-knowledge, and at times, and mandate that they learn about the dominant group, but their group isn't a part of the core curriculum. You know, you can choose to take that elective over there if you want to, but you're mandated to take all this other stuff. So there's a way this has been reinforced, you know, and continues to be reinforced, you know. So was there anything else about the majority experience that stands out to your mind or in your mind?
Well, just speaking on what you just said, that's one of the reasons that I'm glad I chose HBCU, period. Just because learning a lot about people elective. I mean, everyone at Morehouse on the Spelman and Clark, for sure, everyone is required to take certain courses about Black people. Like you have to take at least 2 first-year courses at all 3 of those schools, and all the first-year courses are educating you on. You know, you can be an engineering major or a science major, but you're going to sit down for 2 sociology classes and learn about your history, learn about who you are as a Black person. And like we just say, like Georgia State, they're a school with 56% Black population. That's the majority. You know, there are literally more Black people there than white people. Why don't they have that same luxury of having to know about themselves? You know, of course, at Georgia State, you can always major in, I don't know if that's a major over there, but you always major in, Black politics or something like that. You take the classes in that if you want. If you go to a school
Yeah,
where you're
choice.
also a majority,
Yeah.
you're required to. Everyone there has had the opportunity to be indulged in the privilege of having that sense of self now that we went through those classes and we had the opportunity to learn about it. And everyone at state doesn't have that same feeling.
Well, and I think it's a deep structural commentary, right? That you have to get to a college, number one, to maybe even learn some stuff. But if you're not at HBCU, you still don't learn that. So,
Right.
and given the fact that roughly 25% of folks make it through a 4-year degree, most folk ain't going to college, right? They're a product of the public education system. Will never, ever get to have those experiences.
Exactly.
That's kind of deep to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it raises questions of why aren't we changing public education,
Mm-hmm.
In ways that's age appropriate, but in ways where we tell the truth instead of really teach kind of propaganda in many ways. So you were political science, right? And so you were drawn towards criminal defense law.
Yes.
Yeah. You're fixing to finish a political science degree, right?
And not use it.
Well, you never know, right? But it sounds like you did get kind of bit by the creative bug.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I've always been the creative person. Speaking of this, Tim, I think I scored like the highest in Brooks County history on our creative portion at that point in time of the gifted exam. But yeah, I've always been extremely creative. In high school, I was into photography and videography. I recorded the football games. I made highlight reels for the football games. So I was into that. I won at competitions. I won the school like $10,000. Won competitions with Coca-Cola for one of the videos.
Wow.
So I mean, I was into it. Then my camera broke and I went to school. So I used my first refund from school to just buy another camera, and I was just gonna make pictures like I always did. But one of my friends from back home, he just asked me to record one of his music videos one time. And I was like, because he saw the videos I made for football teams. So I was like, I can do it. So I recorded that one, then I recorded another one like a month or two later. And I recorded like 3 more. And then when I came home from because of COVID, I just hit the ground running with that. So I was probably charging like $100 a visual for music videos. Probably like $200 for commercials, $150 for weddings, stuff like that. So I was just making, that in the grand scheme of how much you can actually make being the creative, that's nothing.
Right.
Me being a broke college student at the time and not wanting a job anymore, that's just something I started doing. And I mean, after a while, it started taking off. And when I made my first $1,000 in one day, I was like, okay, I can actually do this for real.
Wow.
This is a lot of money to make in one day.
Yeah.
If I do this 4 more days, and for an entire year, that's 6 figures. So with that, I just started. I started taking things. I started seeing how it really was. Like I was telling my mom. We talked about this like once a week before she passed. She just wanted me to go to law school. I promised her that I'll probably go to business school for 1 year to keep my scholarship next year. But I told her like, Mom, I'm 19 and I make more than I would be in my first year of a lawyer. So why would I be a lawyer?
Yeah.
I'm still at the ground of this. I'm still charging $300, $400, $500 a visual. And people are trying to pay me a lot more. So why would I go to school and be a lawyer and waste 3 more years of my life?
A lot of money to go to law school too if you don't have a ride too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like I make more than that now. So why would I take that full time if I put all my effort into this, I can be making, what the top of the lawyers make, easily.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of looked at it, into transitioning into accepting that I just want to be a videographer full time. And I told my mom, law school is not gonna go anywhere. If I make enough, so I was just like, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So I don't see you anymore.
Oh, I can see you.
Okay. Well,
I think, yeah, I can see you.
yeah, okay, I see you now. So it was just like, why would I do that? So I just kind of transitioned into, wanting to take up this full time, and COVID's helped a lot because, we've been online. So I've been able to do it for, so many hours a day compared to if I was at school.
Yeah. So are you doing this in Brooks County?
Yes.
Okay.
I do it in Brooks County. Right now I'm in Atlanta. I had a couple up here this weekend.
Cool.
I do it. I mean, most of my work is in South Georgia, North Florida.
Gotcha.
But at least once or twice a month, someone will pay me to come to Atlanta or come to, deeper down in Florida to do something. And I've only been doing it for a year. Yeah. So I mean,
well, one of the things I'm just wondering about it, like I always wanted to be a painter, like a painter, right? Because I did a bunch of art stuff. And then I kind of got political and felt like, well, how can I do painting when the world's kind of the way it is? You still there?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But I never thought about doing political art, like melding those two things. I'm just wondering, do you ever foresee, or have you ever thought about the political wedding with the video and the creative at all?
No. Okay. But the way I view a lot of it's very, very political and very, very, the way I think isn't just focused around political science and Morehouse. I mean, I feel like that with everything I do. So like one of the reasons I'm doing this full time, one of the reasons I'm, trying to start a label, I'm trying to get artists, signed, is because my deepest ambition and my self-giving goal is to destroy the shackles of generational poverty with as many people as possible. And one of the most hypocritical things that I know politicians do is they have that same goal, and you want to be, a senator or a president or, a representative. And I admire that. But at the same time, for like Black politicians, you're Black and you've seen how hard it is for politicians to actually do that. So you're going to this career field and you're knowing that 7 times out of 10, you're not going to help any Black person out of generational poverty. You're not going to help any poor person, whether they're Black, white, Latina, Chinese. You're not going to help anyone out of generational poverty. But that's your given goal, rather than me. I know I have a very more intimate relationship with these people. So if I'm getting these artists, if I'm getting these artists $1 million deals or $100,000 deals, I'm actually changing people's lives. And I'm not going to change as many lives on a wide scale as a politician would.
Yeah.
But when it's time for me to go, I can look back and say, okay, I actually changed the lives of at least 30, 40 people. Rather than a politician, I'll be like, okay, I hope I change someone's life,
Yeah, you create jobs, you could do all kinds of things.
Exactly, so.
Well, let me ask you this, it sounds like, I don't know if you're saying this or not, but learning about, you majored in political science, learning about the political system. I'm sure you learned about campaign financing and lobbying and special interest groups, right? Did it turn you off from politics in a way?
In a way, yes. Just because I realized how ingenuine it is. I've also, I don't know how to say this. I've realized that a lot of politicians, whether they're Black or or liberal or white, their interest, even though their interest may lie in the best interest of Black people or colored people or minorities or marginalized people as a whole, they're still rich. I hate the idea of super rich politicians.
Like career, like.
Exactly. Like if you're getting this paid to be a politician, okay, that's cool,
Yeah.
But why are there millionaire representatives?
Yeah.
The Kelly Loeffler in Georgia, she's a rich person in government right now. Why?
I would say even Nancy Pelosi, right?
Oh, Nancy Pelosi is super rich.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be the Black people's savior, and I hate that.
She wore a kente cloth though, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that did turn me off. Cause like, yes, I want to be rich. I want to be, every young person, they dream of wealth. They dream of, changing, that. But if your life-giving goal is to destroy the shackles of marginalization, you shouldn't be contributing to that very marginalization by getting so much money from it. It's just like billionaire preachers. Like, why do y'all exist? Like, why do y'all make this much money from profiting off people that you say you want to save?
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is, I mean, there's a variety of theorists that have written about this, the power elite. We talk about oligarchies where, this idea of democracy we have, especially at the federal level and even at the state level, if why is it that people who are working class keep electing millionaires to represent us?
Exactly.
And it sounds like you have become convinced that they can't, and in terms of you can have more impact a different way. Is that fair to say?
Exactly. And not to say that they can't help us or that they're not doing their job. Because I mean, like, Bernie Sanders is rich, super rich.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's a great politician in hindsight, But also people have to realize, and like everyone at Morehouse wants to be a great politician, you know what I'm saying? Like everyone, that's probably the most popular major there, because everyone wants to follow tips of Dr. Luther King.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I look at it like this, if I'm going to make money doing this, it's going to be making money from making people millionaires, actually being able to change the way that your family's curses went. A lot of these people that I work with, they were born in poverty, they're raised in poverty. And, when they signed a deal, like I just had a friend who just signed a deal for $100,000. He's only 20 years old, and in hindsight, that's in the music industry, that's not a lot of money, but he's not.
That's a lot for Brooks County.
Exactly. he's from Valdosta, but
that's a lot for Lowndes County, my friend.
Exactly. And he's worth six figures now,
Yeah.
So I know for a fact, if he uses that, correctly, and he, becomes a millionaire, I played a part in his grandchildren's success, so it's one black person in hindsight, but I'll say, I think about it, in 30 years, 40 years, he's going to have kids and grandkids. So now we're talking about 16 black people, 20 black people. That's
in terms of wealth trickling down, or
exactly. Because I was able to help him in an easy way for me, but something that really changed his entire family's life.
I got you. So can I shift gears one more time a little bit? And I won't keep you super long, but I appreciate you making time. Do you have any thoughts on the election, both the presidential, the runoff, what happened last week at the Capitol?
Okay, I can touch on all of those. With the presidential election, I was disappointed that Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee. Simply because I don't hate moderate Democrats, but the worst type of Democrats are moderate Democrats. They have this small sense of conservatism in the liberal world. And that's what Joe Biden is. He's mildly conservative, but he's a liberal, of course. He's a Democrat, but he's, with his policy making, with policy belief, he's somewhat conservative, and it's not hurting.
He's certainly not progressive
people, but it's not exactly, it's not helping modernized people, in opposition to someone, let's say we're talking about like Bernie Sanders, who's, considered a radical socialist. His very sense of political thinking is that he wants to help marginalized people, and he doesn't care who feels what, how much money it costs, any of that. And that
would you have voted for Bernie?
Yes, that's what I voted for in the nominees.
Yeah. How do you feel about the how the Democrats treated him?
They doing what right? They doing wrong. They doing wrong every
They
year.
threw him under the bus, man.
Yeah, they do that every year. I mean,
Yeah, well,
that's
they did it
because
to
we have these rich white people at the
duopoly,
top of this chain. You know,
even
the
in the
Democratic
Democratic
chain.
Party.
Exactly. So I mean, they relate more. They relate to Joe Biden more because you know he still wants to help them, whereas Bernie's very sense of essence is that he wants to destroy marginalization and racism.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if it costs $1 trillion.
Yeah.
That's what he wants to do.
Yeah, I think he's a threat to the Democratic Party.
Exactly.
In some way.
He is.
Right. Yeah. So were you surprised at how close it was?
What the presidential or no?
Neither was
I knew that was gonna happen. I was surprised that Georgia flipped blue.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been so.
Can we stay with the presidential?
So happy to be in Georgia.
Yeah, I'll come back to that in just a second. But it's been interesting to see the white folks in my life's response to the fact that 74 million folks voted for Donald Trump again. You know what I'm saying? I mean, did you find were folks in your life, especially other black folks, were they shocked that that his base grew?
No, I mean I feel like more black people were surprised that Donald Trump didn't win in a landslide. This is because his following is the biggest cult in America. In like no matter what he's done wrong, no matter even the fact that he's insulted his own followers on a weekly basis, you know, for almost his entire campaign, and they still voted for him in record numbers. You know, I just in my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, we can't beat this. Like, there's no way to beat a cult. You know, you can beat a big, you know, a fanboy following. You can't beat a cult. You know, these people are like literally ready to die for Trump.
Well, and if you beat a cult, they may accuse you of cheating.
That's exactly what they're doing too. You know, so
and I'm not a Democrat for the record. I didn't vote for Joe Biden, just so you'll know.
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
I didn't vote for Trump either, but
yeah, okay, that's all that matters. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. Yeah, I just feel as if I wasn't surprised by how close it was. In my mind, I feel like I'm a realist. I want to be optimistic, but realistically speaking, I'm like, there's no way we can beat Trump. Like, there's no way. Like, if we would have had Bernie, it would have been possible. But there's no way Joe Biden, his sense of conservatism and his sense of, you know, he's mildly going crazy. There's no way he can beat Trump. But I'm glad he did. You know, it's in my mind, it was anyone but Trump. You know, if my 7-year-old nephew was running against Trump, my 7-year-old nephew would have my vote.
Yeah. So you were surprised that Georgia went blue?
Yes.
Folks mobilized though, right? Like, I mean, the money that came in, close to $1 billion last I heard with a B. Like, I've never seen Democrats mobilize in this state like they did.
And Stacey Abrams, she did her job. She really did a thing. I mean, I'm so sad that she's not our governor.
Why isn't she in the cabinet?
Because it's Joe Biden. You know, I feel like.
And did you see the press conference where he called and it looked like he was maybe going to announce that she was his running mate? And
that's what I was hoping for.
And did you see that press conference though? And so she's looking all happy, and then he basically doesn't do it, and you can watch her face drop.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not surprised she picked Kamala, because I mean, she's also a very moderate Democrat. You know,
well, she's prosecuted plenty of folks. She's safe.
My mom used to hate me about that because she's an AKA, my mom, and she's also an AKA. So I used to be like, Mom, like I don't want to vote for Kamala, like, because she's your
Kamala. Sorority sister. And
exactly. I'm like, Mom, she done sent all the people that look like me to jail. I don't want to vote for her. But I mean, yeah, I mean, we all know Stacey Abrams was supposed to be his running mate, and if Bernie Sanders was the Democratic elect, Stacey Abrams would have been his running mate. That
would have been an interesting ticket, right?
Yeah, it would have.
Do you think they would have pulled any Trump people, the ones that aren't just kind of white nationalist oriented?
No. They would have pulled the more moderate Democrats towards them, just like what Joe Biden did. I mean, when you cross that line, when you're like a moderate Democrat or moderate Republican, it's like, okay, you can flip. But when you cross, like when you're like an inch past being a moderate Republican, like you're too far gone.
Yeah.
You know, there's no, and I know Republicans that have voted for Trump, but those are also Republicans that are somewhat moderate. They're, you know, they don't have the sense of, you know what I'm saying, white supremacy in them. Like I told my mom, all racists, all Trump supporters aren't racist, but all racists are Trump supporters. So like whenever you cross that line, especially like down here, there's no turning back. There's no question about it, you know?
Yeah, they're not, folks ain't going to admit it, right? I talked to a lot of white folks about it, and yeah, it's been fascinating. I'm talking with a number of white Christian evangelical folks, and it's been interesting to see why they voted for Trump, given how Trump violates a lot of the Christian values that they claim to hold, and I grew up holding to, you know.
It never makes sense. They never make sense with their.
Well, it's amazing how we as humans can rationalize and generate sense out of our choices, right? What did you think about last week?
I wasn't surprised. They're a bunch of thugs and they're a bunch of criminals. Hope they all go to jail.
You think they will?
Some of them are, but as a whole, no. Their whiteness and who they support protects them from, you know, severe prosecution, especially from the people that's from Georgia and Florida or these red states. Or Georgia's a blue state, but still, you know, largely Republican states.
Yeah.
And largely racist states.
Well, it's blue at the federal level. It's red at the state level, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you look at Georgia's like voting map, it's like almost completely red, except for the middle.
And the state house too, right? It's dominated by Republicans, Republican governor, Republican secretary of state.
Exactly.
Right.
So I mean, that protects them. You know, that gives them a sense of protection. So even if they go to jail, they're not gonna go to jail for half of the charges that a lot of the Black Lives Matter protesters went to jail for. Yeah. You know, I saw a Morehouse man, a Spelman girl, ripped out of the car and beaten by the police in Atlanta for trying to leave. But these people were rampaging in the capital of the United States of America and were taking selfies with the police.
Right.
You know, so we see
escorted out, and
they were holding their hands, pushing their wheelchairs by the police. And we live in two different Americas. Like that's like that. That's proof that there are two completely different Americas that those type of people experience compared to what marginalized people and people that accept that this exists live. You know, so like we may live in somewhat the same America. You know, you and I. Because you accept it, you see it for what it is. You know, you mildly fight. You may fight against it. You know, but these people that were storming the Capitol, they don't know this America exists, and if they do know, they don't care. You know, so
I think it also scares them.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So yeah, I do feel bad. Well, I don't feel bad for any one of them. That were hurt. I do feel like maybe. Okay, I'm sorry. One thing that I do hope they learn from this is that they don't truly believe that we now understand that they don't truly believe Blue Lives Matter. You know, because they made Blue Lives Matter out of, you know, in protest to Black Lives Matter, which was extremely weird and uncalled for in the first place. Yeah. But I mean, we saw y'all fighting the police, and
I think they only matter if they agree with.
Exactly. They only matter when they don't get their way. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So
what in terms of the future, what are your thoughts? Like, because these folks ain't going away. I'm concerned that I don't think it's over. I think that was a test run of some regard. And my thing is my white liberal friends have a hard time talking about it. I think the silence of white liberals has also made a lot of this possible.
Yeah.
In all honesty. white liberals who can talk about white privilege and, but in terms of actually changing our behavior and doing things to build a movement where this kind of thing doesn't happen, I think we've dropped the ball. But
Yeah.
I don't think they're going away. And I'm sure you've heard that Twitter and Parler and the rest, they're also going to be seeing themselves as persecuted at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I can barely see you, Jordan. I'm just seeing the top.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
My break on.
Oh, no.
I feel like speaking of the future, it's not going to go away. I'm extremely terrified for the inauguration. My mom, before she passed, that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to go to the inauguration. She was going to get tickets, and we were going to go. I told her I was scared. I was scared to bring her out there. Not for my life.
Even before last week.
Yeah, I just knew these people are genuinely insane, and they're living proof that it's literally a cult for Donald Trump, because people are literally willing to kill people. They're willing to hurt someone else in defense of something as unimportant as as his job. So I do feel as if there's going to be something weird going on the week of the inauguration. I know. If something doesn't happen the week of inauguration, I will be more surprised than if something does happen.
Yeah, me too. Are you well, and I know you got to go, and I got to go too, but we're having kind of a dangerous conversation.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of acknowledge that, given where we live, given your experiences here and my experiences here. And I don't know about Brooks County, I imagine, but over here, like, people, it's dicey. And so I bring that up to ask just are you okay with me posting this? Like, cause I don't want to do anything that puts you at risk.
Yeah, I don't care. I'll stop being afraid of how people feel and what they think. And
I'm more concerned about what they might do.
Oh, I don't care about what they're gonna do either. I mean, their whiteness or their sense of white supremacy can protect them in ways that I feel. I'm sorry, God. How do I want to say it? Generally, simply put, I don't care, because though whiteness may protect someone in certain courts of law. If you try to harm me or harm the people I love or anything like that, I don't care about that. I don't care about, the consequences that may happen, because these are things that need to be talked about in public spaces. I want to make them uncomfortable, because Black people have been uncomfortable for 400 years in this same exact space. So I don't care about how uncomfortable I make them feel, how uncomfortable this video may make them feel. If you're okay with posting it without editing stuff out, I'm perfectly fine.
I don't edit it. I trim the ends if the ends need to be trimmed, but it's pretty raw when I post it.
Well, I mean, if they think this is bad, they can go on my Facebook and it's 10 times worse. I'm going to call things how they are, and I don't care who feels what about it. I mean, I don't care if you feel like you want to harm a 19-year-old, whatever, because of how he feels and how he feels about their sense of ludicrousy and their childishness. That's what it is. I don't really care.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
I'm just kind of struggling, as we've talked, and I don't want to do anything to put you at risk. And at the same time, you have a right to your voice, When it seems to me like, because again, I told you before we started recording that I've reached out to conservatives, and it's interesting because it seems to me white America is, for the first time, it's pissed off that it actually has to compete for resources with other folks for the first time It's pissed off that it actually is asked to think about what it says. It's pissed off that kind of monuments and statues that it doesn't really even understand are being challenged, that we're just having social change, right?
Mm-hmm.
And folks want to go back to, again, like I said, a mythical time where the world was about people like me, and we could tell ourselves that we were great. And, you know, as we excluded everybody else from competing with us, you know, and so in some ways, folks are getting just a little taste of what it's like to be Black or a woman, or you know what I mean? Just a little taste, and folks are ready to be extremely violent, you know, which,
and it's disgusting.
you know,
I feel like if they would have upheld their values that they had 3 months ago, when Black Lives Matter protesters, you know, were quote unquote rioting, if they would have upheld their values like they had, or the sense of thinking that they had, then now we wouldn't be as angry. You know, we're seeing white people destroy government property.
Yeah.
White people
and kill a police officer with a fire extinguisher.
Exactly.
In the process, and injure dozens others.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, we didn't do all that,
and
but
call themselves patriots.
Now,
yeah.
I'm like to them, like if you guys were as angry now as you guys were then, we wouldn't care. You know, you guys could have your way moving forward, but how come you guys are only angry when we are mad? Yeah. You know, you're only angry in response to us, but when they're doing this, it's, oh, they didn't or they, you know, they have a reason, or, you know, but they're destroying taxpayer brought stuff.
Yeah, well, they also argue God is on their side.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the thing to me, is like, as a follower of Jesus, I don't know what Jesus they're following. I mean, I don't mean that to be funny either. Like, that's like how humans rationalize our behavior is both fascinating and so utterly dangerous to me, that you could claim to follow the same model of humanity that I do, who says love your enemy, who's, you know, turn the other cheek, feed the poor, but you think God wants you to go kill some people if things change that you don't like. I mean, it's terrifying. I'm scared, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm scared for our country. I'm scared for, you know, my people throughout my country. But one thing I do want to leave to, you know, the conservative people that may watch this, I want you guys to understand that if Jesus was alive, he would be a radical liberal to you guys.
He's a leftist. That's what I keep telling folks. There ain't nothing conservative about Jesus. Nothing.
It's like, and I also want to tell people that oppose Black Lives Matter movement, Jesus too was an unarmed colored man killed by police. No, long before the police existed, when, you know,
for challenging power.
Exactly. You know, he was also an unarmed colored man killed by these people. Executed in broad daylight, like a lot of Black men are.
Yeah, and left for everybody to see.
Exactly.
To make a point.
Exactly. So when you guys are arguing that Jesus wouldn't support Black Lives Matter, I would argue that Black Lives Matter because of Jesus. He was one of the very first examples of, you know, a colored man or a brown man, whether he was Black, brown, or
he's Middle Eastern. He's got to be brown.
Exactly.
He's not a blonde hippie. Come on. Exactly. Geographically, it's impossible.
Exactly.
Not to mention what the Bible says about, was it the skin, or the
skin of bronze,
clay, and the woolly hair, and right, you know.
That's a North African man, if you ask me. At that point in time. Take into consideration that Jesus was an unarmed, you know, brown man killed in broad daylight by police. Taking consideration that if he was alive, most of y'all would consider him being a radical liberal as well, who oppose government, and you guys will not like him. So when you guys are moving forward, claiming that you guys are supporters of Jesus, ask yourself, why, if you're a supporter of Jesus, why aren't you a liberal? Why aren't you a progressive? And that's all I have. That's the last thing I had to say.
Okay, man. Well, Jordan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. Good luck with the video company. I'll put your video company link, if that's okay,
Mhm.
in the description. And I really appreciate it and enjoyed the conversation. And I'll tell Angie we chatted, and I really am thankful that she kind of introduced me to you. So
Thank you,
all right, man.
for having me. You know,
Yeah, it was a
I
pleasure.
haven't had a chance to use my voice
Yeah,
to speak in a while, actually.
cool. And I'll send you a link as soon as I get it posted too.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay.